Right. Hello, everybody. My name's Rachel Shackleton from Green Key Personal Development, and I have the pleasure of having a coffee room chat with Stephen Whitton from Enable. We're going to be talking about male and female work environment in celebration of International Men's Day on the 19th of November this year.
Brilliant. Perfect. What kind of chat was that? Did you say? A what?
Coffee chat, I think I said.
Oh, a coffee chat, right.
Could be a beer chat.
No, I just didn't click what you said. Let me just quit a couple of things because they're going to ping if I don't. Right, okay. Cool. So now we can get into the chat proper. So how are we going to who's going to kick this off?
So why don't we take this general question of what we're talking about work environments? Let's, what are the key characteristics, or what would we expect to see as the key characteristics of a male environment versus a more female oriented environment? And then from that, we can pull in all kinds of characteristics and benefits and all things that would sort of really open a good chat, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm just thinking about how because if we do that, we've both got an intro. I take it you're going to have some sort of, I don't know, theme tune or something that how are you going to edit this?
Well, I don't. I mean, my social media person does.
Oh, right. Okay. So we now need to kind of start off a conversation as though it's.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of us needs to start.
Well, so we could come from the other angle of something like we both work in leadership in different environments. Steve, why don't you mention a few things about the automotive industry, which is the area you mostly work, something like that, and the types of characteristics, and then I can perhaps dig into that. Something
okay, well,
like
I'll tell you what, why don't we yeah, we could do that, but in terms of making a bit of a segue from the intro to the program, why don't I just say, okay, let's just introduce each other's audience at this point. Make it, do you know what I mean? So I'm just visualizing, like on like a TV program, you'd have the sort of intro and then you have the music and then they come back and go, right, here we go. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like they're hosting it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Do you want me to lead on that?
Yeah. Why don't you do that?
Yeah. Is that all right? Yeah. So, Rachel, for the benefit of each other's audiences, should we tell everyone a little bit about us and where we're from and how we came together to chat about this subject?
Sounds good, Stephen. Go ahead.
Okay. It's like that, is it? All right, fair enough. The outtakes of this are going to be brilliant, by the way. If you get bored with this program, we're going to upload the outtakes as well. So we've already had a few, haven't we? So no doubt there's going to be a few more as we go through. So yeah, so we came together, didn't we, to talk about masculine environments particularly. And I think, in fairness, did I do a talk or something that you were in the audience of? And I think I may have mentioned something that resonated with you on that, didn't I?
Not really, because I wasn't there.
Oh, that's... Okay.
We can put this out as how not to do an interview.
Yeah, well, this is what happens when you try to do an interview that's not an interview. But yeah, so how did we meet then, Rachel? Start again.
What was it? What's it?
PSA. If you like or want to comment on this already, by the way, just crack on. This is going to be how it is from now on.
We met at PSA, the Public Speaking Association, some years ago, if you remember, and then for some reason we crossed paths again, and that's how the universe works, isn't it?
It is. Now, wasn't it your PA, EA, VA that attended the set. I knew one of you did.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was how we got connected, wasn't it? Because she thought it would be a good idea for us to have a chat.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. She attended your virtual presentation. That's right. Yes, correct,
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, so starting again then. Just
Yeah.
pause for a second. Could you possibly turn your speakers down because I'm getting feedback?
All right. How do I?
That's going to come out on the or put them headphones in, one or the other.
Can I still hear you if I put the headphones in?
Yeah, you should be able to. It's just that I can hear what I'm saying. Oh, and that's stopped now. Actually, have you turned it down?
I turned the volume down a bit.
Can you still hear me though?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go with it for the time being then. So.
Okay. Right.
All right. So Rachel, on with the serious stuff then, for as long as we possibly can. We were starting to talk about masculine environments, weren't we? Because when we did actually, in fairness, meet face to face fairly recently, we got onto the subject of masculinity in the workplace, and it certainly resonated for you, and obviously it resonates for me. So what's your view and angle on all of that then?
Well, as somebody that works with leaders and leadership in organizations, it's very much something I think is I don't know about you, but I think it's more of a Western approach to leadership, that we're very goal oriented, we're very driven, we're very bottom line profitability. And sometimes in that almost rush, we forget to think about the emotions of the people and the nurturing that's required to motivate, to inspire people, which not all masculine, but a lot of that is it's not all feminine, but a lot of that is coming in to soften the masculine approach. I think that was crap, Stephen.
Do you want to do that again, or do you want to just me to just
like, what? Yes.
So all right, let's start that again then from the top.
Yeah, sorry.
So we came together, didn't we, to talk, and we started talking about masculine environments, because I think, as you've mentioned, I grew up in the automotive industry, and you've worked in a few countries that do have a bit of a masculine culture, it must be said. So we'll come on to that, I'm sure. But so what's your take on the whole masculinity in the workplace thing then?
I think when masculinity gets too strong, if we can say it that way, in the work environment, we find that leadership moves sort of from the democratic side more into the autocratic and possibly right to the extreme of autocracy, as we see in some of the world orders today. I think the masculine environment is primarily related to Western cultures, where we focus very much on goal-driven workplaces, on profitability and bottom line, on measuring the number of bums in seats, and so on and so forth. And in that, when pressure is on from an external environment, we tend to find that the more feminine tendencies or characteristics get steamrolled in this rush to achieve these budgets, these targets, these goals, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, all of that completely resonates with me from growing up in the automotive sector. I mean, you couldn't get much more of a target or objective driven environment than that, really. And so that masculinity plays out every day in the form of objectives and results and performance and spreadsheets and measurement. And the femininity of that nurturing, collaboration, emotion and so on just gets suppressed. And you said that you'd found the same in some of the places that you'd worked in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Russia, and interestingly enough, Russia is referred to as Mother Russia. And when you look at the cultural,
other autocratic countries are available.
yes, yes, of course. I mean, I'm talking about Russia. I'm not talking about it in a derogatory way.
No.
But this idea of Mother Russia, and when you look at the dimensions, if you're thinking about Hofstadter's cultural dimensions, there's a lot of femininity in the Russian culture, but for some reason it doesn't come out necessarily in the leadership style, and that might well be because of their history, coming up through communistic style of this is what you do and you do it like this and that's it. There's no discussion. But certainly there's a lot of softness there, which when you access it underneath, there's a lot of femininity in the workplace, and it doesn't take much to encourage leaders in countries like Russia to bring more of that femininity to the fore, as you say, collaboration, cooperation, nurturing, effective listening, understanding, and all these more feminine aspects. Teamwork is another one.
This is fascinating, because could it be then that actually, we're almost casting a fairly critical Western eye over that type of culture, or I was while you were talking, but at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, is it actually that they've got a better handle on celebrating the femininity in their culture and making that kind of demarcation line, I guess, between what femininity does to serve you and what masculinity does to serve you? Do you know where I'm going with that? Does that make sense?
That's a very interesting observation. In that it's
I've never been, so I don't know. I'm just, I know you've worked there. So
when I think about certainly in the earlier years of going in as a woman to go and sell my services, but in the best possible way, Stephen.
I was going to say, whoa, hello, hang on a minute, it's taken a turn.
We're referring to training services here. It was almost frowned upon to go in with your feminine traits, but at the same time it was appreciated. And I found that initially I needed to be more masculine to get heard.
This is in Russia.
Yes, and then once
right.
I was heard, it was okay to drop that goal orientation. I'm here to do X, Y, and Z, and bring in humor, more elements of more touchy-feely is the wrong word, but more about, well, tell me really what's going on with this group of people. Where is the conflict? Where are the things that we need to work on? And it went further away from, but came back to the points of, okay, well, this is what we need to achieve based on what you've told me. This will support your growth and development of the organization or your profitability or whatever it was, in that way. So the conversation almost went a bit masculine, then more feminine, much softer, and then back, but not back up here, more back in the middle of, well, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what we're going to achieve.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I am totally fascinated by this because, as I talk about masculine and feminine environments, and I genuinely have walked into an office full of women, and yet the energy in there is so masculine. Because it's all about results and achievement and targets and objectives. That's very, I think for the purposes of anyone watching or listening to this, they might be thinking that we're talking about the difference between men and women, or male and female. And actually for me, I'm talking about energy, regardless of what gender you're assigned at birth. This is about the energy and that's about breaking down what those differences are in business and in the workplace. And that's what I mean when I say I've seen lots of women behave in a very masculine energy kind of way.
Yes, and that's because because you feel you have to. I think for some women, there is a feeling that in order to be in a male environment, and again, as you said, male energy environment, and to climb the ladder, you've got to be more male oriented in the way that you operate.
Mm.
And that sometimes is a shame, because if you tune into the characteristics and the energies of being feminine, you actually can achieve the same result in a more in a more balanced way, without burning up or trying to burn up, not consciously, a lot of energy to do the same job.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, you know, by contrast, I've also worked with organizations where it's been too feminine in their culture. I mean, I'll give an example, and this is not a criticism, but I've worked with a few charities where the feminine energy, you know, is everyone works in the charity because it's about caring and nurturing and collaboration and creativity. And what they cry out for is somebody to take some kind of a lead in terms of driving for results and performance. So in the nicest possible way, we can all sit there and cuddle each other and tell how great we are at supporting the people that the charity's cause is about. But without the funding, you ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I agree with you. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, is that it isn't about masculine energy or feminine energy being a better place. It's about that balance, isn't it? It's like yin and yang, or light and dark. You've got to have both sides to achieve the end result, whatever that end result looks like for your business and your organization. And that balance, I think, certainly for employees, when you look at leadership, when they know that they're cared for, that they are valued, that their input, their creativity, their ideas, their hard work is important to the organization, the results go or get there themselves, almost, because you've got that lovely balance of, I love my job, I feel very secure and safe, I love my boss who's understanding, caring, but at the same time I've got direction, I know where I'm going, I know what I need to achieve, and so on.
Yeah, I've got to say, some of the bosses that I've had over the years, you know, the ones that I've properly got behind and been supportive of have been the ones that have been very, very clear on direction, guidance. You know exactly where you stand, what the objectives are, you know, and there's an unspoken kind of, you know what the consequences would be if you didn't follow that direction that's being laid down. But at the same time, you felt safe enough to be able to approach them and say that, this is what's happening for me.
Yeah.
But in fairness, you and I are of a similar age, probably. I'm probably older than you, actually, Rachel.
Too kind, Stephen.
and I can certainly say from experience that the number of bosses that I've had like that, I could count on one hand. And maybe even one finger.
Yes, I think it's two of my bosses stand out a mile. One for being so awful, and actually she was a lady. I'm sure she still is a lady, but she had this incredible masculine drive, and as a result of that, wanted to micromanage me. And that crushed all my creativity, it crushed my inspiration, it crushed my motivation, of which generally is not something that I ever suffered from. Self-motivation and getting on with the job once I understood the direction. And on the other side, I had the most wonderful male boss very early on in my career in training and development. And he was just so magnificent. He would sit down and tell me about it. Tell me about this problem. And where do you want to go with this? And well, why there? Why not over here? And it was incredibly collaborative, and I never ever felt that my contribution was unworthy or a load of nonsense. It may well have been a load of nonsense, but I never got the feeling from him at all. So there you have two bosses, one female who was overly masculine from my point of view in terms of the energies, and one male who was quite feminine in his energies and approaches, but still got the job done because he inspired me.
Pause.
Do you have any examples of leaders that come to mind?
What, that inspired me?
Yeah, that or didn't inspire you, and therefore what were their masculine?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got to say, while we've been talking, I've written down two words, and they are acceptance and understanding. And as is fairly well published now, my story, goes a bit into areas that have only recently, well, in the mainstream, have become things that are everyone's being expected to just be accepting of now, and certainly 25, 30 years ago it never was. And against that backdrop, I became a very insecure, lacking self-confidence type of person. You'd never tell, because I was gobby and cracked a few jokes and effed and jeffed like a sailor and made myself fit in the same as everyone else. But yeah, I look back, funnily enough, I was thinking about this earlier and thinking there's an organization that I used to work for, where it was spreadsheet driven, and the leaders were all, no room, no time for any kind of conversation around caring, nurturing, creativity. It was, no, you follow the process, you follow, you read into what's on the spreadsheet and you make adjustments accordingly. And I even got described, in the short period of time that I was there, I got described as slushy, or gushing actually. But my emotions were on show, and I was walking around crying my eyes out, but I was very happy to sort of tap into the emotional side of people and try and get the best out of them that way. And that was unheard of in that organization. And then they wonder why they got 65% staff turnover.
And that's it. And how do you think that actually an organization ends up in that place?
If I'm honest, I think it's when you have a very autocratic leadership style. And you and I, we talked before about what energy you put into the universe, and you attract what you're kind of looking for and all that stuff. And I think they, without realizing it, seem to attract certain type of individual that probably does lack self-esteem, lack confidence, but they're quite happy to get into these roles and get promoted, and of course they'll be the type of people who will do as they're told for a while. In fact, when I first joined, one of my colleagues said to me, you will either comply or die. You'll either fit in or F off. Yeah. And well, I did the latter because I was there 13 months. And that was only because I was, needed to from a personal perspective. But if that hadn't have been there, I would have probably been out of there after a few weeks, because I could see, just by looking around, how the attitudes changed. So I don't know how they got there, because this particular organization had 9,500 employees. And they weren't all like that, clearly, but there just seemed to be, people just seemed to fit.
Sometimes I think that a work environment, and again, I'm thinking of a particular client that I did quite a lot of work for, and I obviously is going to name no names, in the FMCG market, and the work environment was incredibly masculine. It was just, okay, you need to sell this much, you need to get out there, you need to get out to retailers, you need to this, you need to that. And it was just drive. And you could see the people burning out. I mean, essentially the teams that I were working with were the sales teams at that time. And you could just see that the amount of pressure that they were under could not be sustained for a long period of time. And again, I think you said 65% turnover. I don't know the turnover figures in this particular organization, but I do know that there was quite a lot of turnover, because the same people wouldn't be there for the next program and so on. And certainly some got promoted, but you just think in our market today, that kind of working environment is going to suffer, because if you can't retain your staff and there aren't people to replace those team members with, you're building a problem for yourself, which is unnecessary, as in yourself, as in an organization.
Yeah, and I think this organization, and they're not alone. They're probably one of the worst, and obviously I'm not going to name them, but anyone who's in the automotive industry will probably know who I'm talking about. I hope that they have changed actually since the time I was there, which was nearly 10 years ago now. And they do have a reputation for burning people, and they always did. And anyone who went there would be sort of like, really, you're going there? Okay, well, we'll see you again in 6 months' time then. And and that was the kind of mindset. Now, ironically, one of the bosses that I had when I was there, who was this exceptionally tough cookie. I mean, people did fear this particular individual. I don't know where I got the courage from, because this guy's like twice my size as well physically, and he came into my business one day, and we went for a walk to go and get a sandwich. And I just looked at him and I went, so come on then, tell me about you. And I won't do his accent because it'll kind of give away who he was. And he sort of looked at me, or looked down at me, and was like, well, what do you mean? What do you want to know? And I said, come on. I said, I get to see the boss version of you all the time, and hear you on conference calls and see you at meetings. I said, well, I want to know about the real you. And he just looked at me and he went, do you know what? No one's ever asked me that. And I went, oh, no, well, there you go. And then he started opening up, and he was telling me about what was going on for him and his wife and his family. And you could physically feel the aggression, I want to call it that, the aggression kind of oozing out of him, but not in the typical kind of, I'm going to flail around until you do what I say kind of way that he'd probably been used to. And we got on great after that, and we could pick up the phone to each other and go, how are you? And just have a bit of a chat. And yeah.
Sounded like he was carrying around a mask, Stephen.
Oh, 100%. That's well, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there with that one, and that's not uncommon, and that's exactly where I was. And I said to someone the other day that I've been invited to an event where the dress code is lounge suit and tie. Well, I haven't worn a tie for I can't remember, 4 years.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, why do I need to wear a suit and tie to, in inverted commas, fit in?
It's so interesting you say that, because this person that I mentioned earlier as being a wonderful example of somebody to work for as in a boss, and sadly is no longer with us. But those were his exact words. He was the only senior member of the leadership team, and he was a senior member responsible for more than one hotel. And he said, Rachel, he said, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to come in a suit and tie because everybody else thinks I should be wearing a suit and tie. He said, it doesn't change how I do my job. He said, I'll still do my job and do it well. And he said, that's not me. That's not where I'm at. I am me, and you see me in my clothes. He would come in a nice pair of trousers and a jersey usually, but and that's it, isn't it, Stephen? Is why do we need to put a mask on to fit a role in the way that we think the rest of society or people or whoever we're referring to thinks is the right way to appear.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean,
credibility. Sorry, to get credibility. I
mean, yeah. No, you're right. And I mean, for me, I'm sorely tempted to go to this event either dressed in a pair of red trousers and a flowery shirt and get my fingernails painted to make a point, or go to a supermarket and buy the cheapest, nastiest polyester suit I can find with a schoolboy type shirt and a tie that's halfway around my neck and go, well, I'm complying with your dress code. But that's probably why I'm not employed anymore.
Yeah.
Because you know what I mean? That for me is where it got me, was this sort of the masculinity bit is about fitting in. Now I understand if I went for a job at the Ritz and they said, look, you're front of house, therefore the uniform is this. And I get that and I accept that and I respect that. But if the dress code is from a bygone era of fitting in, then I'm sorry, but I don't get that or buy into that anymore. And that's what causes the kind of staff retention issues that some people are experiencing, because they go, do you know, well, why would I can get a job where I can spend most of the day sitting in my pajama bottoms and on Zoom calls.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about that. I mean, it wasn't exactly about that, but it was about working from home and the stresses that are not yet apparent. But actually it was about my sister-in-law, bless her heart, and she has gone from going out a lot, and I won't mention the type of job, but it's a very stressful job that she has, going out visiting her clients and doing all that, going to court and representing her clients and so on, to actually doing it now at home on Zoom. And the key point there is not that she doesn't dress up. She always does when she's online and she's doing her job professionally, and she's very professional. But she doesn't have that space anymore to download the stress of the day. So she literally comes down the stairs and she's on fire with stress because of the way her day went, or the volume of clients that she had to represent, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whereas before she would probably have to drive 30-40 minutes, and by the time she got home, she'd listen to some music in her car, she'd wind down the window, she'd admire the view, you know, whatever it was. And by the time she walked through the front door, that stress had certainly reduced dramatically. And I wonder how many people now with the hybrid working, I mean, I know we've come a little bit off masculine, feminine, but we still need to be able to unload our stress. And when you haven't got a physical requirement to go somewhere or come back to somewhere, that space, you've got to create that space. Otherwise it gets downloaded in your home and stays there in those four walls.
Well, I mean, it is a slight tangent, I guess, but actually it's a relevant one, because what it immediately makes me think is that some of the masculine and feminine stuff that we're talking about, and you made the point about it being a very Western thing, perhaps some of that comes back to the traditional stereotypical roles that men and women have fitted into in kind of post-war Western society, which was why I asked the question, you know, is it in countries like Russia, is it more that actually the femininity side of it, you know, because they call it Mother Russia and so on, you know, is all of that more celebrated than it is where we are? And perhaps actually we're in a period of transition of kind of going through this kind of fuzzy period until it gets more balanced.
Yes, and I think that, you know, that it's this, what's this quote? Do you live to work, or do you work to live? And the Western sort of world is, well, you know, I live to work, whereas Have I got it the right way around? Whereas the other countries,
I know what you mean.
they're you know, they take time out to celebrate, to enjoy life, to have quality family time, and to unwind in different ways. And that was something that I always appreciated about doing business in Russia, is that people just, oh, an opportunity for a party, let's get going. And you know, and it was just so easy to create that celebratory atmosphere, to just divert things a little bit, and to de-stress the environment, or to just have some fun together and just be who you are in the work environment. And again, you know, that's sort of coming around in the Western world, but we tend to keep those kind of things to, you know, okay, the New Year party or the summer get together picnic or whatever we call it. It's not a spontaneous action. It's just a planned action. And, you know, it's done in a very planned way.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there is the caveat that if you're in the UK, you can't do anything spontaneously without having several changes of clothes for all sorts of weather that you might encounter. But I know exactly what you mean. I mean, what was going through my mind while you were describing that was, you know, I can remember, you know, when I was married, having all sorts of sort of barbecues, and my wife would spend a week shopping for it, and then spend 2 days preparing for it. And I would be the one that would light the barbecue and make the sausages black on the outside and pink on the inside, and then take all the glory, you know, and sit there and everyone would be going, oh, Steve, this is a great barbecue, thanks. And I'd forget completely that, you know, she'd been slaving in the kitchen all morning, creating various desserts and beautiful looking salads. And
yeah,
you know, and I completely, all right, before I get letters about that, I do take that completely on the chin, but I'm sure I'm not the only guy in that scenario that's kind of, you know, in the past dropped into that very typical stereotype. But so, I mean, let's spin that on the other side then. We've talked a lot about masculine environments. What about feminine environments?
You know, when you ask that question about what about feminine environments, I immediately comes to my mind is two things. One is the elephant, and the elephant is a matriarchal herd, and the other is the horse, which is also a matriarchal herd. And when you look at the elephants particularly, I mean, I don't know if you know anything about that, and it's quite fascinating that they grieve when they lose one of their herd. They protect the young and the new into the herd. They support each other. I'm sure they probably celebrate each other in some ways as well. I mean, when you see them in the water hole, you know, they're spraying water on each other and not just on themselves. And I think, you know, a lot of those things are feminine ways of being. You know, we operate as a team. We provide that security together. We celebrate things. We have fun. We collaborate. So if somebody's not feeling so good, we come together and we help that person along. And there's an understanding there. It's an accepted understanding that the femininity of the female matriarch is accepted, but it's also can become masculine if it needs to be, because I mean, an elephant has no problem to turn your car over if you
get too close or yeah.
Too threatening. But they seem to have that balance well. So those are some of the things that I think are feminine characteristics. And these aspects of listening, feeling how somebody else is maybe struggling or trying to say something that which they're finding difficult to actually share, or they need some help because they're a little bit under the weather. It's noticing, maybe that's what I'm looking for, is this noticing aspect, rather than being in a you know, a hurry to, well, you know, we've only got 5 minutes before we open, or, you know, whatever it might be. I mean, we all have business operational issues that have to get done, but sometimes we miss the people in the process. They just become part of the machinery almost, which is a bit harsh, and I don't mean it to be harsh in that way at all. It's
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, even in the last couple of days, I've had you know, I've been lucky enough to have been taken out for lunch the other day, and then dinner the other night. What a life. Anyway, on both occasions, though, it was very evident in one restaurant and one pub that the people in there were working to a process. And then on the second occasion, my friend and I went to this local pub, and you know, we got a drink, and then I'd eaten a bit early, so I just said, oh, I'll have a dessert, you know, just get something off the menu, and paid a lot of money for this dessert that I expected to be pretty spectacular for the price, and it wasn't. And when I sort of raised that point to the server, it came back, you know, all that came back was a tirade of apologies that, oh, well, yeah, well, you know, we had this chef here, he was giving away too much, and so we've had to be restricted. So now that is completely on spec. And I'm like, I'm a customer, I don't want to hear that.
No.
You know, I don't want to hear that. That's
so what would you have want to hear?
I would have, well, you see, again, I don't know whether I'm starting to one question where I was actually going with that, even as I was saying it. But I think the point for me is, what I would have preferred was a little bit more feminine intuition for that server, who happened to be a young guy, to grab that dessert, take a look at it, and use your word, to notice that there's no way does that dessert look like it's 10 quid's worth, which is what it was. It was a Black Forest Knickerbocker Glory, for anyone's wondering, which by the description said it was layers of chocolate sponge, layers of ice cream, layers of whipped cream, and it was basically a chunk of brownie dropped in the bottom of a glass with a blob of ice cream and some whipped cream on the top. And that was it. And that was 10 quid. But the glass was still a sundae glass, which is a good, 10 or 11 inches high. So this thing only just half filled it. So I would have expected someone from chef to server to use a little bit of, this is the absence of femininity, to be able to go, no, that doesn't look right, I'm not giving that to the customer, because they're gonna you know, they're either going to silently accept it or they're going to kick off, and use a little bit of intuition. But when challenged, this particular individual was like, oh yeah, sorry about that, oh, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, my thought or my thinking is, you know, did that person have the courage to actually say to the chef, I'm sorry, chef,
that's not good enough.
This is £10, you know, can we do something about that, because it isn't good enough. And I wonder if the chef is not a little bit hard on people.
Well, funnily enough, yeah, just as we were leaving, the chef actually did come out and speak to another customer who, I don't know whether they'd complained or something, for some reason he was talking to them. And even he was in the sort of, oh yeah, sorry about that, well, we've changed supplier and this has happened and that's happened. And I think it's back to, I realize where I was going with that now. It was your point about process over people. You know, on the spreadsheet, it says 1 blob of ice cream, 1 chunk of brownie, and a shaving off a chocolate bar. And that was it. 10 quid, happy days. You know, well, let's put that to one side and go, hang on a minute. We've got a customer out there that's not going to have read our process and accept that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just change the glass size.
Change the glass size, make it like, oh no, yeah, just exactly, just have a little bit of, oh, hang on a minute, let's think about this. But
I mean, you know, when you talk about food, I mean, we eat the food first with our eyes before we even eat it, and if it's not looking like, wow, you know, for layers of the description, for layers of it, of course, then you go deeper and you think, well, that's 10 quid. And that you're disappointed before you've even tasted the thing. I mean, it could be the most magnificent Knickerbocker Glory chocolate sundae ice cream thing.
that wasn't.
Well, but the perception is already messed up.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is it is a relevant tangent, because it's well, is that about feminine versus masculine? Is that about psychological safety in that business? Could that young waiter go to the chef who's a bit older than him and go, chef, really, seriously, come on, we need to fluff these customers up a little bit, and an extra blob of ice cream isn't going to cost the business that much more. You know, so is that feminine masculine difference? Is it a people process thing? Is it a behavioral trait thing? Have we got somebody there who's, you know, complying with the process because that's what they've been told to do, rather than, you know? And actually, I'm probably answering my own question here. If you wind all of that back and go, when we induct that employee, what are we saying? You comply with the process, or else here's the spreadsheet with the process on it. Or are we saying your job here is to care for, nurture, and be creative and look after customers
within certain boundaries? And I coming down to it, isn't it, Stephen? I mean, where does empowerment fit? Is empowerment more feminine or is it more masculine? Interesting question.
Yeah, not sure. Answers on a postcard.
It's giving out that trust. Yeah. Yes, it allows people to make decisions to make sure that that customer is happy, in the case of this environment, when they walk out the door, so they'll come back again. Now, obviously, you know, within reason, because you can't say, well, you know, the person's disappointed with the £10 Knickerbocker Glory, so we'll give him a hotel suite for the night. I mean, that's also completely out of balance. But empowerment, I think, is part of letting go of the process a little bit and expanding it outwards into that area of trust and teamwork that allows that person to say, chef, my customer's not going to be happy with that. What can you do with it?
Yeah. Squirt the cream a bit higher, or stick an extra flake in it, or you know, whatever it might be to manage the perception. So do you know what? I've written 3 key words down as a result of this chat. What would you say you've taken from it? Because I think we started off trying to resolve the world's problem of masculine and feminine energy, and we've gone all around the various estates to get there. Still not sure we know what the answer is, but that's kind of the point, really.
Yes, I think. I mean, I think for me, it's about balance. And that's probably is the one word that sums it all up. It's not about having an all feminine energy environment or an all masculine energy environment. It's about appreciating both sides of the coin, the yin and the yang, and the positives of both types of energies, and bringing them together appropriately under every situation and circumstance.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely hit the nail on the head. I mean, the 3 words for me are, well, you said it, noticing. I think that's pretty key. Understanding, and you know, and this is a big thing for me throughout my life, is the word acceptance. You know, and that's what kind of started this conversation, was that level of acceptance that I lived in an environment where I never accepted myself, so how could I expect anyone else to? And for both you and I, we're now working with leaders where we can see those kind of traits, you know, and they're tapping into behaviors that they've learned along the way, but actually you track it all the way back, and somewhere in there is a lack of acceptance of themselves.
Which is one of the reasons I think it's so important to look at self-leadership before you go into leadership as as a skill. It's not a skill base, it's about understanding yourself. When you understand yourself, you understand, you've got more space to understand others.
Yeah, 100%.
And therefore need others.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly in the automotive industry, you know, less so now, but over the years, the legacy has been that what you do is you take the best salesperson, again, probably with the most masculine traits because they can put the most sales on the board, and then you promote that person into a management position, and they use the behaviors that they've learned from previous managers to manage other people. And so you asked earlier, you know, where does this masculinity come from? Well, it's kind of nurtured and grown and, you know, kind of developed from within. It's, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
That, I mean, that topic of promoting the most capable employee is a massive topic, and I've seen that happen so many times, and you lose a good employee very often, and you get a very poor manager, and nobody's fault if there was a little bit of forethought and a little bit of nurturing to give them the skills before they got into that position. The end result would have been pretty powerful. Yeah, maybe that's for another chat, Stephen.
Who knows? Yeah, absolutely is, definitely, because I think this conversation could go on and on and on and on. But from my perspective, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Rachel. So thank you very much indeed for joining us on Men-Able Matters. For this,
fantastic, Stephen. I thoroughly enjoyed it as well, and a lot of nice, well, not more than nice, a lot of information in there to give leaders some thought processes around their environments and what they're creating in their environments. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Rachel Shackleton, thank you so much. And if you want more stuff on Men-Able Matters, just like or subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll be back again very soon.
And Stephen Whitton, thank you so much. On behalf of Green Key, I want to say thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Take care. Thanks a lot.